You're listening to Oilers Nation Radio, presented by the Nation Network. Subscribe for free on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Welcome to Oilers Nation Radio, episode 117. I am Bag Milk here with my friend Tyler Yaremchuk, Rick, and Nation Dan. We are here to break down all things Edmonton Oilers and NHL for you, as we do every Friday. It's next Friday is going to be, we probably won't be doing an episode next Friday, right? It's Christmas next Friday.
It's Christmas Day. Yeah, I can't imagine we're going to be recording a podcast.
So this will probably be this is going to be the last podcast before Christmas. So we're going to also wish you very, very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays wherever you are spending that this year. But first, we're going to start off by giving a shout out to our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant out in Sherwood Park, Alberta. Again, it's winterizing time for your vehicle. I don't know about you guys, gentlemen, but it was a very chilly day in the capital city yesterday. It's looking to warm up a little bit. That's nice, but it is time to get this stuff done, whether it's an oil change, whether you need some winter tires, whether you just need a new whip entirely. Our friends at Sherwood Ford are here for you for all of your vehicle needs. Follow them on Twitter at Sherwood Ford and on Instagram at Sherwood_the Giant. As we do every week, we're going to start off with the Giant question of the week. Mr. Yaremchuk, this one's obvious. What do you got for us?
Yeah, it was the big story that kind of came out in the last 24, 48 hours here. And that's, are you okay with, the NHL going down and moving the Canadian teams to the US if it means, the season can start maybe a little earlier, or the season can, I guess, start at all. But I guess just in general, what's your take on the report that we might be moving all 7 Canadian teams down to the States?
Rick, I want to start with you. What do you think about this one, buddy?
I don't know what to think, man. I wish there was a little bit more information out there as to exactly why this is even a subject, why it needs to be brought up. Yeah, there's a lot of questions out there. So till then, I'm just going to take it for what it is and say, no, I don't like it at all. Why would we want them to go down there? I guess, we've already seen other cities. Well, Toronto have to do it a couple times with basketball and the Blue Jays there. So I guess if it gets a season going, I suppose I have to be behind it in the long run, but I'm not going to like it. I'm going to stomp my feet the whole way.
Nation Dan, your thought about the Edmonton Oilers of Anaheim or wherever they end up?
Well, I think to steal a phrase from one of our former partner podcasts, everything is wrestling. And I think there's a little bit of negotiation that's going on here, a little bit of sweating, some governments and saying, we got to make a decision here. If you want hockey in your city, you got to make a call and kind of play along with us. But at the same time, when it comes to fans, especially here in Edmonton, I don't think we have to worry about being able to go to games. So it's not really that big of a deal. I think more so for the human aspect of things, for the players that play for these teams in Canada, they're going to be away from their families now for a good stretch of the year. And that's tough to see. And you got to think that that's going to affect some people, especially maybe if they have younger families. So that's where it's tough for me. But I do believe that they will be able to figure it out. I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, I agree with Dan 100% on that one. I think he hit the nail on the head. Like, I think there's a little bit of politics at play here. I think it's a little bit of like, the government's maybe floated that out and now the NHL wants it out in the public being like, hey, look what might have to happen here if, BC doesn't agree to sign off on what we want to do. And I also think it's a little bit of a play towards the players from the league. It's sitting there going, hey, if you guys don't want to do hubs for the first month of the season, or if you don't want to be playing in a neutral site for 3 weeks at a time for a bit, then you might have to move down to the States if we want to get this season going and you want to get paid. So I definitely think there's a little bit of politics at play here.
So I wrote about this yesterday on The Nation after the news came out. And as I was writing about it, I was thinking about it. First of all, there are only 7 Canadian teams in a 31-team league right now. So if the other ones are already going to be ready to go, or hopefully ready to go for some time in January, it makes sense just to bring them all down if that's where it has to go as the worst case scenario. I also agree that there's probably information going back and forth between the health officials and the league, and they're still working through all the details. Like, there's a ton of logistics that need to go into putting an NHL season to getting it underway. And there's so many details that need to be ironed out before this is able to go. And if you remember to the season, if you remember to the playoffs in the summer, this kind of happened then as well. It was a different time of year, different part of the pandemic, different numbers entirely. But I also remember health officials weren't just going to rubber stamp this move to bring a hub into Edmonton. So I'm kind of looking back at what happened there and thinking, yeah, the situation's different. There's obviously much bigger stakes at play here, but it worked out in the end. They found a way to get it done. And I feel like the same thing here. The way I think about it though, in terms of would I care that the Oilers are not in Edmonton and that they're playing in, I don't know, we're going to talk about potential cities for where they could go in a second, but like say they're playing in Houston, because that's the obvious joke everybody's making. Do I really care if I can't go? I don't know. Is Connor still wearing an Oilers logo? Yeah. Is he still doing the thing? Yeah. It sucks. It's weird, but you know what? I'm in a spot maybe where it's just, I'm going to embrace the weirdness of whatever happens, as long as we get the show on the road.
To an extent, the people I would kind of feel for are, like the staff of the Oilers that, aren't making the millions of dollars that might need to now go down to the States there and like uproot their lives for potentially 5 or 6 months. Like you feel a little bit for them, because you heard stories about that with the Raptors as well. Like people having to, a couple weeks for the holidays. I know it's not the same because this won't happen over the holidays, but in the NBA, like you had to say goodbye to your family for a while, and you weren't going to bring your family with you to a COVID hotbed in Florida. So there is a bit of like a human aspect to this as well.
There's a ton of human aspect to it. And I wonder how much of it is like you said, Tyler, just kind of not necessarily a negotiation, but they're still working through a bunch of details on this thing. And maybe this is what it takes, like you said, to push it into a temporary hub, be it Toronto and Edmonton like it was in the summer, or Toronto and wherever in Canada are the two neutral sites, or whatever it takes to make it work. Do you think, like if you were to guess, based on just your conversations on the radio and everything like that, is that kind of where you're lying right now?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, it's been a frustrating month, just a couple months, just to keep talking about this, right? Because like I'd made the joke that for all of November, it was like, oh, this next 7 days is important. And now we've like sped that up a little bit, where it's like, oh, these next 48 hours, they're crucial 48 hours. And we've had January 1 bumped to January 13. And now it's probably going to be jumped to what we're looking probably late January, the 25th, maybe is going to be a new target date here for the NHL. So it's just, there's a part of me that wants to just stop and be like, I joked with Frank Saravalli about this the other day when I called him. I said, Frank, there's a part of me that wants to just say, just let us know when it's done, and let's just stop talking about it until the deal's done.
Do you think it makes the NHL look bad at all, though?
At this, is possibly. I mean, like, I think that having them say, well, I mean, it's not a great look for them to say December,
especially
1st.
If basketball works.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's differences there, right? Like it's just there's more money in basketball. There's
how's that
more
a thing?
American
Like,
teams.
Make it. But if the reports are true that the money is all sorted at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the element too is the Canadian teams. There's too many Canadian teams to have to, like we saw it, like you said, Beg Milk, in June, they went to Vegas and they said, well, that's not going to work because of the COVID cases. They went to Vancouver and Vancouver played hardball. BC's health authority said no. And so the NHL walked on that, and then they came to us. But it's just, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it necessarily looks bad on the NHL. It looks bad on the players if they're playing in January. It's less than a month after the NBA got their stuff figured out. The NBA has a different NHL, but they have a different level of They have a different level of creation, right? Like putting down a court, you can put down a court in
they were doing it in ballrooms or whatever, conference rooms, I should say.
Exactly. You can't put down rinks in ballrooms. Like when we talk about the possible cities that the Oilers could be playing out of, that's limited to the number of cities that have arenas that can house a team and house them comfortably. So it's, I don't know.
Sure
there's minutia.
I think there's going to be, like, for only 7 teams, I think there's tons of cities that maybe even don't even have teams yet that'll be happy to take. Like, how often have we heard of the Kansas Cities of the world trying to get an NHL team over the last few years? And if they were a temporary home for the Oilers or, whoever it is, that they would love that opportunity to show that they can actually put together a NHL caliber facility for these guys.
This really does, though. It feels like a bit of a doomsday scenario in the sense that, if they went to the players and said, listen, we have every province except for, like, today I heard, could it be BC again? Like Dan just said, that's just strong arming the NHL. They could go to the players and say, listen, either the Vancouver Canucks, move to Edmonton and play out of Rogers Place for the first 2 months of the season, or all 7 of you are going down to the US. Like, the solution is very simple. It's do the players want to move down to the US or go live in a Canadian hub for a month until things are a little bit better? Like, which one would they choose? They're obviously going to pick go live in another Canadian city for a month.
So, what's going to be interesting too is we're going to have Jordin Tootoo coming up on the podcast here in a little bit. I'm super excited to talk to him. I want to ask him what he thinks, because he's a guy who's played over 700 games in the show. He would have a better idea of, maybe he's not involved right now, but like he would have a better idea of what kind of conversations are maybe happening behind the scenes with players right now, of what kind of a deal would this be? Because for us as fans, it's easy to say, just be like, yeah, sure, move to Kansas City or Houston, or, you know, move the Jets back to Atlanta or the Flames, whichever they get to choose, or maybe they get both, 2 for 1. It's easy for us to say that, but I'd be curious to hear his perspective, or just educated guess on what this might look like behind the scenes.
Well, exactly. If BC's the issue here, just tell the Canucks to go find somewhere else to play.
Well, but that's the thing, and that's what Bagmo's kind of saying, is that is there stuff that we're not thinking of as fans that the players might have as a non-negotiable kind of thing. So it's a good point. It's going to be fun to hear from Jordin on that.
Like, can it really be as simple as being, okay, we're using BC as our example. If BC is the one that can't make it work, is it really as simple as being like, you're the Saskatoon Canucks for the immediate future while we try and get this figured out? Or
for sure it is. For sure it is. There's neutral site games in all sports for, you know, weird reasons here, there, and everywhere. But yeah, it shouldn't be that tough to go fire him into a junior building or something. You know, there's something out there, and for sure there's something in Saskatchewan that could do it.
But I think that a lot of it or something we're not thinking about, or we haven't mentioned yet, is the fact that all these teams are going to want to stay in their time zone, right? They're going to want to maintain the continuity for their fans, because the money and the revenue that they're seeing is TV deal based.
Well,
and so but for a Vancouver team, they're not going to want to go to Saskatoon and play 2 time zones over from their home. I don't know.
They'll just come to Edmonton. Edmonton has the facilities in one building. They can stay at the Marriott. They can not have to go outside and brave the cold or anything like that. I know Mitch Marner joked yesterday about how he wouldn't mind going to a warm weather city for a bit. Like, put them in the Marriott. They can practice at the community rink. They have their games at Rogers. It all works out. Like, everything's there. You're only an hour away. Start your games at 8:00 Edmonton time, and it's 7:00 Vancouver time. Like, to me, if it really is just BC and their government standing in the way of this, it's an incredibly simple solution of just move the Canucks to Edmonton for a month, and then a month later go to BC and say, now can we come back? And if they say no, go, sorry, another 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right?
But it could also be the issue that we've floated out a couple times on this podcast about trades and transactions, and wanting the NHL probably wanting to have that expedited and have it be a 4-day window of quarantine instead of the 2 weeks that's advised right now. So I don't know. There's all kinds of things. I know we're just saying BC because of sake of argument, but there's all kinds of issues that could be up that we're not hearing about.
Have them all fly through Calgary and rapid test. Like, that's what Connor did, right? Yeah. He came up, rapid tested, flew through Calgary, and he was good to go. He was posting videos of him hugging Leonard like the next day, right? So
we have rapid tests coming here in like a couple of weeks.
Oh, dude, even easier, right? I don't know. I kind of, there's a part of me that just sees right through this whole, we might have to go to the US thing. Like, I just think it's all like doomsday scenario to get fans riled up a little bit and go like, oh, this government better not, like, blah, blah, blah. And to get the players going, ooh, shit.
Bettman would take a shit before he let everyone go to the US. Like, look how hard he fought to keep Edmonton in Edmonton. There's no way he's going to let 7 teams.
And look how hard he fought to keep Winnipeg in Winnipeg.
Well, it's like,
hey, listen,
also, I would say on the flip side, like, you have to also understand the NHL's viewpoint as well. If this is going to be a problem with local health authorities and they can't find a common ground or whatever needs to get done, obviously none of us have any idea what the fuck's going on. But you also have to give the NHL the benefit of the doubt. Like, they need to plan B, C, and D. Like, why wouldn't they? If this was coming out that they can't find middle ground with local health authorities, and again, this could just be posturing, all of that stuff, I agree. I get it. But wouldn't that be very irresponsible of the NHL if this was going on in the background for them not to be developing a plan B, C, and D on this?
Yeah, You're right.
There's so much in the balance that I can imagine them having all kinds of random hypothetical scenarios that they're looking at that may or may not happen, because this is the strangest year of all time to try and do this. So I think that the reaction was a little bit entertaining to me. The people were very like anti one side or the other, somewhere in the middle. It just, to me, it just makes sense to come up with plans. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. And to me, that's kind of what I thought the NHL was doing with this a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think this is a very very high up there in the options of things to do. Yeah. I didn't really take this very seriously when I heard it. So
if you're looking for options, that reminds me, that's a nice little transition to our friends at skipthedishes.ca. If you're looking for something to eat this weekend or any day of the week, head on over. There are thousands of options from local restaurants around the city. They are doing the best they can right now, and we encourage you to support them. So if you're looking for something to eat, head on over to skipthedishes.ca. My question for you guys, though, back to the conversation we were just having, does this kind of new set of wrinkles make you nervous about the season? I'm seeing more of that coming up on Twitter again. I mean, where were we? A week ago, 10 days ago, they had just said January 13th, let's rock and roll. And here we are, a couple of weeks later or less, and there seems to be more hiccups. Is anybody getting nervous yet?
I'm not. I still think they're going to find a way to get it done. And maybe it won't end up being 56 games. It's likely not going to be January 13th. But again, maybe it's 48 games that starts on January 29th, and we're going to speed up the schedule a little bit. But there's no way we don't get a season. There's no way that come January 18th, they just pull the plug and go, sorry guys, not going to work. I think there are some owners that might prefer that from a financial perspective, but Bettman's he's not going to be the one to pull the plug.
I just think that also for me, Tyler, I agree with you. I just also think that if there wasn't still real hope and a plan to get this season going, that the PA wouldn't have all their players flying back to their team cities. Like just this morning before we started recording, I guess earlier in the morning, I should say, Carpat tweeted basically a farewell to Jesse Puljujarvi. He's coming back to Edmonton. Like that shit wouldn't happen if they were really like, well, boys, I don't know if this is going to happen. Does anybody disagree with that?
No. They're coming back for a reason here. They're not coming back just to quarantine and have a little bit of fun and then go back to Finland for the second half of the Liga season.
And it's not we're not talking about prospects either, right? We're not just talking about the Waz or the Lagesons of the world. We're talking about guys that are going to be on our NHL roster. So yeah, that's the canary in the coal mine for me, that we're getting closer. It's just minutia now, and they're working on stuff and still obviously negotiating a little bit of stuff in the media.
I found it a little bit interesting. Bob Stauffer tweeted out some of the players that are staying over in Europe. Maximov staying in the K, Raphael Lavoie staying over in the Allsvenskan, Dmitry Samorikov staying in the K, Philip Berglund staying over in the SHL, Philip Kemp is staying over as well, Olivier Rodrigue. Seems like a handful of guys that would normally be at camp, at least maybe get an exhibition game or just go through the actual camp part. They're staying in Europe as well. Any names on that quick list surprise you that are not coming over, Tyler?
No, not at all. Like, again, that seems like a list of guys who weren't really shoo-ins or anything like that to make the roster, or even like, I wouldn't have even considered any of them dark horses to make the team out of camp, right? Even with a taxi squad, you probably want it to be veteran guys. So leave them over in Europe or in the KHL, let them finish off their season, have some continuity, and they'll come to the American League when their year's done.
Yeah.
Because we know, like, Samorukov, we knew he signed straight up for the KHL for 1 year, right? Because
that wasn't a loan.
When shit went down. No, so we knew that one was coming. And I think there was one other one there too. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Might have been Maximov.
Yeah, that's what it was. They both went over there just because of the uncertainty in the AHL. So we knew they were not coming back for this year. Otherwise, those are two guys you would expect to see on Bakersfield's roster.
A guy like Lavoie is having a really good year in the second league in Sweden. So it just makes sense to let him be there. We still don't know what's going on with the AHL.
That list just feels like the first cuts of a training camp. That's all it is. It's just they have to do a truncated training camp. So those guys are the first cuts. They've already seen what they need to see from them over there, and they'll have the rest of the season to keep working on stuff.
Was anybody surprised to see Evan Bouchard on the first wave over?
No, because I think he's going to be on the team. I don't think they're looking at this as a developmental year for Bouchard. I think they're looking at Bouchard as an asset who is going to help them win this season. And, if it was the matter of, no, he's going to start in the American League and that's the plan, we're slow playing it, they absolutely would have left him in Europe for probably another month, I'd say, and then brought him straight to the American League. But they want him getting NHL reps this year.
Yeah, well, we talked about it on Inside the Nation, Tyler, myself, and Zach on Tuesday afternoon there at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Tune in.
Yes.
But yeah, I just said, the reality is, when we talked about it last week, I think it was last week, I had said I don't think that Bouchard comes over. But when you really look at our depth chart, he's the next best right-handed defenseman up. That's not to say that Ken Holland isn't working on that, but that's the reality that we live in. So him, Lagesson are probably your two defensemen that you're looking at as a taxi squad.
That's not a bad thing to have him as your next up on right-handed defenseman. That's a great
pretty good
option to have.
But I think
the only question I ask is he the number 7 or is Lagesson the number 7?
I think it depends what side the injury is on, right, Dan?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
I think it comes down to position, but what I said on Inside the Nation was if they do work out some kind of deal where it frees up a little bit of money for everybody, I do think that and I've been tooting this horn since this all started, but I do think that Ken Holland has to go out and find a veteran defenseman, whether he's right-handed or left-handed, somebody that's played some NHL minutes to be able to come in a long-term injury situation. I don't think that Bouchard is bad in a spot duty, but I don't want to ask Bouchard to be playing, full-time minutes for 40 games this season kind of thing.
I think as a third line defenseman, if he had to come in for, regardless of which 3 went down, he would come in as the number 3. And I think the coaches would handle that appropriately in terms of minutes. I don't think I'd be too worried about it. If they do bring in that veteran, I think it'll be closer to the trade deadline for one of those playoff push types of things. Mike Green, hopefully we'll get a couple more games out of him though.
What a trade that turned out to be just in hindsight because of just luck and whatever. Tyler, you're my resident PTO everybody specialist. These Oilers might look at maybe bringing in some bodies on PTOs despite not having really any cap space. And also, by the way, speaking of cap space, that's going to be a really interesting thing to see how the league and the players work out, just in that if you're on the taxi squad, you're not playing, but you're not in the NHL. So how does that affect your cap? Where does those numbers hit? Are they clearing waivers to go from the taxi squad onto the? So there's going to be a lot of interesting details that come out on this weird situation the league and PA have to sort out. But Tyler, back to the question: anybody coming in on PTO in your mind?
I think PTOs are so tough, especially with the existence of the taxi squad and with quarantine rules around North America. Like if you pick a PTO team, that's your one shot. I don't think there's going to really be any of this release from this PTO, but hopping back in with this team in camp. I
was going to say that's the Versteeg model.
I was going to say Versteeg, but then I'm like, well, no, it actually would be pretty easy to just drive to Calgary and be like, will you guys sign me? But no, I think, maybe a veteran defenseman would be smart to add. I wouldn't mind, I said it in a mailbag in my rumors blog this week. But I think if you go out and get a veteran D-man up for the taxi squad, and then go bring back Riley Sheahan if he's open to it and put him on the taxi squad. What happens? Let's doomsday it here. What if one of the big centermen go down and then all of a sudden Turris or Kara go down as well? Having Sheahan around is not the worst backup plan because you know what he is. You know what he can do. He knows how to play in the system.
I think it's a safe move if those injuries ever happen. But dear God, am I going to pray against those? That's terrifying.
Yeah. 100%. And it would be at this point too, look at what Anthony Duclair signed for yesterday. To get Sheahan back would be whoever gets him. I'm actually surprised he hasn't signed anywhere because he's going to be a very cheap bottom 6 option for somebody. Yeah. He's just going to be basically signed for a prayer at this point. So I think that's an interesting one.
There's a lot of quick transactions, I think, coming as they announce it. We've started to see them trickle in a little bit. The Jets signed somebody. The Flames just signed Killington this morning. I think that there's going to be some snap reactions where they've got the contract in front of the guy, just waiting for the go ahead on the season before they sign on the dotted line.
Or waiting for, maybe there's veteran guys out there who are waiting for clarity on what the taxi squads will look like, right? Maybe they're sitting there being like, listen, if you guarantee me my NHL money, if I'm on that taxi squad, I'm in, I'll sign. But if I'm going to be playing on this taxi squad for 80, 90K, I know that's, a good chunk of money to a normal person, but to a hockey player, it's certainly not. Right. But if they're if I'm getting AHL money to play on that taxi squad, I'm sitting the year or I'm calling it quits.
Yeah, it's weird though. Some of those guys, Double A is going to have to make that option, man. Some of these guys are in the position to sit a year or, retire. Like they're in their prime. They're going to be 23, 24. They're going to be itching. It's going to be really weird.
Since you mentioned Andreas Athanasiou, I'm going to take this moment right now to admit how wrong I was on the thought of maybe, qualifying him at the money he was at a little bit earlier, considering as now, if he does get a job in the NHL, it is going to probably cost that team just like a firm handshake. So I will take this opportunity today. It is December 18th at 1:08 p.m. as we're recording this. I was very fucking wrong about that one. Anyway,
I was pretty firmly in the. I was like, you don't want this to just go to nothing here. Maybe you just qualify him and come on, you'll be able to trade him or something. The offseason did not unfold that way, and credit to Ken Holland, because with that $3 million, he made it stretch.
He got a lot done with that money that would have otherwise gone to a guy who could have been hit or missed. You never know.
Yeah.
Also, still nothing on Ethan Bear, hey? Still nothing on Ethan Bear.
And that's one of those ones where I expect once things to get ironed out a bit, that's inter-organizational stuff. That's on tables. That's ready to go. I don't know if the UFA stuff is going to be as forward, but there must be something there for him. Just waiting to get going.
Well, we need Clefbaum's LITR money for that, don't we?
You know what? We should really get Hard on the podcast to explain this to us. Hard from
we've been saying that for like 2 weeks.
Behind puckpedia.com.
Well, no, because if you think about it, you get paid from the first game to the last game, right? So I don't think you get paid for training camp or anything like that. You'll have a contract going in, but your contract won't actually start till game one, and that's exactly when you can deal with Clefbaum.
But cap compliance is going to be something that they're going to have to figure out with the new deal here, right? Because technically, according to the schedule of the CBA, they're supposed to be cap compliant right now, but there's 11 teams that aren't. So there's got to be something in that deal that has to figure out where we stand with Ethan Bear versus Clefbaum.
Somebody flip on your PS4 or 5, whatever, start up a new NHL season and see when it gets you there. So what do you have to do?
But you need to be cap compliant for day one of the season, not day one of training camp. So throughout training camp, you can be over, but day one, and with Clefbaum's LTIR, I think we've talked about this before, but you basically want to get as close to $81.5 million as possible without going over, so that you can put Clefbaum on LTIR the second the regular season starts or when that begins. And then that way you clear up all 4.1 million. And then maybe they are just telling Ethan Bear, stay fresh, get ready. Unfortunately, you're not coming to training camp, but the second that regular season starts, Clefbaum and LTIR, Bear gets a 1-year, $800,000 deal, and they have $3.2 million left after
he can still go to camp. He just can't. He can choose not to go to camp, right? Because you see players all the time say, I'm not coming to camp without a contract. But very few of them will actually go. So here's the thing. So they're negative $89,000. So they're up, so he's got to shed just a tad there.
You just got to basically throw Yamamoto down in the minors for a night.
Paper transaction,
and you'll be fine. Even if you sign Bear, I honestly don't think Bear is going to get
contract.
I'm not sure. But Bear, I don't think is going to get more than, $1.5 million, like 1.5 million. Even that I think might be a stretch. Shillington only got 900K. So
maybe 2, but he'd have to sign for 2 years for that.
Yeah. I could see it just being super cheap. And then at that point, throw Nygaard on waivers, throw Yamamoto down. You're going to be cap compliant. Hey,
Nygaard's on fire right now. We got to be nice to him.
We got a guest joining us on the podcast, boys. Let's get into it.
You're listening to Oilers Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts.
Very, very excited to welcome to the show the veteran of 723 NHL games, a World Juniors tournament that's coming up here in the City of Champions, author of All the Way, My Life on Ice, Jordin Tootoo. Thank you very much for being here, sir.
Hey, guys, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Jordin, the first question we were talking about actually right before you jumped on is we were talking about the news that came out yesterday that the NHL is considering possibly a plan to move the Canadian teams down south for the year if they have to, if they can't find an agreement with local health authorities. And we thought from a player perspective, as somebody who's been in some of these conversations, what do you think kind of conversations are happening behind the scenes from a player perspective? Because as a fan, it seems easy for me to say, oh, well, if I can't go to a game anyway, what's the difference to me if I watch the Oilers in Edmonton or if they're in Kansas City or wherever? But behind the scenes, what do you think kind of is happening right now with all of this?
Well, this is all news to me. I don't really read the paper or.
Good for you. Best way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
This is new to me, but that being said, you know, I live here in Kelowna full time now, and a lot of guys who play live in Kelowna in the off season, and good buddies with a lot of them that were in the bubble in Edmonton. I don't think it was the greatest experience a lot of them had. You know, I think a lot of them with family members, with kids, being away for months on end, really took a toll on them mentally. And I know for a fact that, you know, a few of them were dealing with, you know, mental issues when they got out of the bubble, because it was like, fuck, these guys hadn't seen grass in a few months, you know, walking concrete from hotel to the arena. So, you know, dealing with that after the fact. So, you know what, to be honest, I would say kibosh a year, kibosh season and start next year, because it's, I mean, look at it, starting in January, the guys are going to get beat up here with a condensed schedule. Everything's just fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think that's a great point.
You brought up a condensed schedule, and that's something that I've been thinking about for a while, is if the NHL is actually going to get going, they're going to have to pack a lot of games into a shorter time span. What does that do for a player in terms of, you guys, at least from an outsider perspective, seem to be almost creatures of habit where you have your routines? Like, how much would a condensed schedule really affect your day-to-day lives in terms of preparation and practice and all of that?
Me, I would feel like if I was still playing, I feel like I'm in a playoff series, because, you know, the games are so condensed that, you know, you play a game, you got to forget about it, win or lose, right? And on to the next one, just keep firing away. But, you know, mentally, physically, it takes a freaking toll on the guy, right? And come playoff time, I guarantee you, guys, a lot of guys on the teams that make it are going to be burnt out, and you know, it's injuries, you know, the quick turnaround. God, it's going to be interesting.
Well, and it's something too, Jordan. We were talking about it, and that's why we're so excited to have you here, is talking about World Junior Hockey. And, you know, for you, that in that truncated kind of a tournament where you were the energy guy back in 2003, you were that was kind of your welcoming party to the hockey community, and everybody got excited about the old Tootoo train coming to town. So yeah, I mean, speaking to that, it's, for a World Junior tournament, it's got to be hard on you mentally and physically to be able to get up and play for your country every day, back to back, and games 3 and 4 in 5 nights kind of thing.
Yeah, you know what? You know, at that age, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, you know, you're full of piss and vinegar. And, you know, to represent your country, God, it's you're on such a high to begin with, that you know what, you got to keep that momentum going, win or lose, especially in a tournament like that. I've watched the World Juniors ever since I played in them, and you know, watching certain players, you know, you can't get down on yourselves on these types of situations, because it's like a playoff series, 1 game playoff series. And you know, at that age, it might be a little harder for guys to get over, whether they made mistakes or they lost the game. But you know, I think as players, you got to realize that you got to let go of the game you just played and move on to the next one, win or lose. It's just like, you know, being in the Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, right? Or, you know, it's obviously this is on an international stage, and to represent freaking Canada, for a kid coming from Nunavut, it's every kid's dream playing street hockey, and watching and being a part of it was just amazing experience.
Looking back at that 03 camp and going into the training camp for Team Canada, like we're seeing right now, all the videos that are being posted of the kids finding out they're making the team and how excited they were. What do you remember about maybe the pressures you felt during training camp? And do you remember the moment when you found out you made the team? What was that like?
Well, I don't think I was even on Canadian Hockey Canada radar as a 18, 19-year-old until, up training camp or the tryouts in December. I was leading the league, the Western Hockey League, in points leading up to that tournament. And so, I think Hockey Canada was like, holy shit, like, we got to invite Tootoo. And you know what? I buried my head. I just, did everything that I could control to give myself the best opportunity. And that was just working hard, being a good teammate, being a good guy in the dressing room. And next thing you know it, I remember I was roommates with Derek Roy, and come final cuts, the phone rings in our hotel room, and I look over at Royzy, and I'm like, you fucking answer it. He's like, no, you answer it. And, I answered the phone and got the news that I made the team. I tried to stay composed because I didn't know if Royzy made the team or not. And I handed him the phone, and he hung up and looked over at me and had the biggest grin. And that's when I knew we both made the team. So it was awesome.
We also, earlier in the week on one of our other podcasts, we had Jeff Wojcicka on the podcast, and he mentioned that he spent some time with you at the World Juniors, and he brought up a story, and we want you to confirm it for us. He brought up a story about you selling caribou jerky at the 03 World Juniors. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in my community, I'm from Rankin Inlet, Nunavut, which is located right along the Hudson Bay. We had a meat processing plant there, and they produced caribou jerky. And so, on the side, I was indeed selling caribou jerky.
That is fantastic.
We're loving it. And I always told the guys, you eat this shit, it's going to make you go nuts on the ice. It gives you that extra boost and all that, rather than taking Sudafed and whatever else to give you energy. I said, boys, eat this stuff. It'll give you that extra boost. And they all fell for it. And I guess it worked until the gold medal game.
It was funny listening to Jeff tell the story too, because he's like, you know what? It's social media had been around when we were in the World Juniors. Maybe Jordin would have been able to sell more jerky than he did back in the day.
Totally, I would have made a killing, but you know what? It was me, Royzy, Jeff Wojcicka. Yeah, we played juniors. He played with the Rebels, and every year we played in the playoffs. We had our little battles going. Unbelievable guy. Just a true great teammate. I had the opportunity to fight him in the big leagues a couple times, and it was all good.
Well, I was going to say, Jordin. Yeah, I'll let Tyler lead into it, but we partner with hockeyfights.com and so yes, on that podcast, Tyler has a clip he wants to play for you here from Jeff.
Yeah, we asked Wojcicka about his fights with you, and here I got about a 30-second clip to play for you. Your first NHL fight, I think that would have been the one against Jordin Tootoo, right?
Tootoo, that was at center ice in Nashville, and he would chase me around. He would chase me around in Red Deer. I fought him 8 times one year when we were playing against Red Deer and Brandon. He would chase me around the rink every time.
I never understand it. Yeah. You two were roommates at World Juniors.
He just wanted to fight me.
And now he just wants to fight you. I do not get it.
Every day he wanted,
Did it have to do with the beef jerky? Did you?
I didn't put any in my suitcase.
But he said you guys had some crazy battles in junior.
Yeah, you know, I always like picking on the bigger guys, right? And Woisey was, you know, what is he? 6'3", 200.
He's a big dude, yeah.
220 pounds back then. I don't know what he weighs now. I don't want to take a guess, but yeah, it was just one of those things, right? You know, I'd much rather fight Woisey than, you know, a guy like Vandermeer or you know, a couple of the heavyweights that Red Deer had back then. But you know what? Just a big teddy bear that guy is, and it was always. It's funny. A couple days ago, we were chatting, and I said, you know what, Woisey, I was never mad when we fought, and I can honestly say you're probably the only guy that, you know, I enjoyed fighting, because, you know, every fighter, let's be real here, you know, if that's your role, I don't think guys really enjoy it, but, you know, at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do if you want to you know, make the big leagues, and that was my role. And every time me and Woisey fought, it was to entertain the fans.
As we were getting ready for today's podcast, Jordan, we were kind of talking about, again, going through some of your fight catalog at hockeyfights.com. It seemed like there was no weight class for you. You were just, whoever needed to get it, you were ready to step up and do it. How did you kind of overcome, I mean, I just imagine for myself, how did you overcome the fear of maybe going up against a guy who, you know, he's got some reach and some pounds on you?
Well, guys, when you have a set of moose nuts on you, no, ultimately, you know what? For me, I always use this line: mind over matter. You know, your brain, when you tell yourself that, hey, you go into any fight that you're going to win or lose, it gives you an opportunity right off the bat. And for me, I would say, because of the way I grew up, the environment, you know, every young kid growing up in the far north in remote communities has to be mentally strong to survive. And that's something that I am forever grateful to have. And, you know, because it's helped me throughout my hockey career to, when times are tough, to just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and you never know what might happen.
Another thing I was thinking about as we were getting set for this interview was you and I are roughly the same age. So I watched from your time at the World Juniors all the way through Nashville, through the end of your career. One thing I think about with you is you hit like a truck. So I want to flip it on the reverse to you. Who was a guy maybe when you were playing that you knew if he was on the ice, you had to keep your head on a swivel, because if you didn't, he would tag you?
Well, when I was young, early in my career, not that we played the New Jersey Devils a lot, but I had the opportunity to play against Scott Stevens. And I remember going into the corner, and I was just like, oh, shit, you know.
You're right at elbow height.
And, yeah, he's one guy. I mean, the guy, fortunately, I had the opportunity to be coached by him when I was playing in New Jersey. And he actually brought up that play. He's like, Toots, remember, you know, you kind of knocked the wind out of me. I'm like, I did? Fuck. I think broke like 3 of my ribs and located my shoulder. But nothing that really stands out. I was always a guy who, you know, had my head on a swivel every time I was on the ice. And I think earlier in my career, I was more looking for that big hit every shift. The game was a lot different, you know, 15 years ago, you know, where the third and fourth line guys, it was a freaking battle. And, thank goodness I had heavyweights on both sides of me to look after me.
Well, I know specifically your time in Nashville, you blew up a bunch of Oilers that we would have been watching at the time. So it was always a concern when the Oilers ever went again into Nashville or had Nashville here.
Oh, one of my favorite barns to play in was when we came up to play Edmonton, because I had, you guys all know the big Indigenous communities around Edmonton. A lot of fans came out and watched, and I'll tell you guys a story. We played in Vancouver, and we had like 3 days off in Vancouver. Our next game was in Edmonton. Well, early in my career, I was still drinking and, having a good time. I woke up one morning and I decided to go get a tattoo on my back. Figured, a couple days off, the tattoo will heal up before we play Edmonton. And we get to Edmonton, and the Oilers are promoting me being in town, and sold a bunch of tickets to all the reserves. And come game time, Trotzy calls me into his office and Healthy scratches me. Wow, shit hit the fan. The fans were losing it. People were asking for refunds, and Trotzy kind of gave me a little lesson learned to never get a tattoo during the season. Never know if it might get infected or not. So yeah, that was just me, young and stupid.
How's the tattoo looking these days?
Fantastic.
You've mentioned Barry Trotz there, and you've had quite the repertoire of coaches that have been with you over the years. Is there one that you really look back and say, that guy really helped me become a better professional, better person, anything like that?
Well, Trotzy, by far. I started off in Nashville as a 20-year-old. I had 8 tremendous years there with him. Trotzy cared about Jordin Tootoo, the person, not the hockey player. And you know what? You don't see that too often with coaches. And, he was the one that helped me get through my struggles off the ice. And someone that was able to relate to my story, and so I commend Trotzy for allowing me and giving me an opportunity to fix myself in order to keep playing in the NHL.
Jordan, one of the areas I wanted to touch on with you, and this is a question I love whenever we get a chance to talk to a guy who fought a lot in his career. I always want to talk about goals as well, because you mentioned it in the WHL, you were leading the league in scoring heading into the World Junior break. Like, you had offensive skill. Is there a goal in your career that stands out as like the best goal you scored? Maybe it was a big playoff game. Maybe it was the one at the World Juniors, but is there one that stands out?
Oh, well, obviously my first NHL goal, I think it was October. Can't remember the exact day. Like I said, I've been punching the fucking head where he's not the greatest, but we were playing Atlanta Thrashers. I was at the top of the left face-off dot. Merit Zalicki, our centerman won the draw back to Merit Zalicki. Zalicki passed it over to Dan Hamhuis, and Hammer, I believe it was either Hammer or Zalicki, gave me a one-timer, and I scored a goal on, I think it was Pasi Nurminen.
Oh, nice.
I did just find the goal. That was October 23rd, 2003. So we'll definitely include that in the article as well. That's super cool. You just blasted it right from the circle.
Yeah, I honestly, I didn't even know I went in at the start, and until the guys put their hands up. But probably one of my most memorable goals, I would say, is I only scored 2 goals in the World Juniors, and the first one, it was in Halifax, and the place just erupted, and I was just, you can feel the vibration right down your spine every time we scored a goal. But scoring a couple goals on that stage was pretty awesome.
Well, I was in Halifax at the time, Jordan, and I can confirm that, like, I was talking to random strangers up on the concourse about this Jordin Tootoo kid and how exciting it is to watch you. So it was great. And to talk about World Juniors again, and talking about the fans, we've got all these kids now that are getting into this tournament, and they're not going to have fans to watch them. How do you think that kind of changes the mentality of the tournament as a whole? I know you as a player would, you could get the crowd going in a pretty good way there, whether there was a hit or a goal. But yeah, speak to the experience for these kids, how it's going to be different not having any fans in the stands.
Well, obviously anytime you have your fans behind you, it gives that little extra boost. And I experienced the World Juniors here in Vancouver a couple of years ago, and I was sitting in the stands watching, and I reminiscing, like, God, like when I was their age, I didn't realize how passionate Canadian fans are for Team Canada. And I'm just looking around in the arena, and it's just like, wow, like these young kids have no idea how much they mean to our country. And that's a lot of pressure, right, for these kids. But, I think, having that momentum behind it's going to be totally different for these kids. I think ultimately it's got to come from within. The guys in the dressing room, the role players got to play a huge role in keeping the guys up, your top guys. I remember no one ever treated anyone differently, whether you're a first line guy or a fourth line guy. And it's all about the sacrifice, right? In that tournament. Like, I remember being the leading goal scorer of my team, but I was playing fourth line minutes, maybe 4, 5, 6 minutes a game, but I accepted the role. And sometimes it's difficult for these kids to accept the role that they're given. It could be a different role. And you know what, when everyone's on the same page, guys on the bench are cheering each other on. That's where the energy is going to come from for these kids.
If you were to maybe even give some advice just in general on creating the fire within, like, do you have an idea maybe how you talked about the role players are going to have to try and do some more in terms of getting that going with the players? If the crowd's not there, what can a person do to build that fire within to make sure that they're going forward in an environment that's so abnormal?
Yeah. First things first is stay off social media. Don't read the media papers. That's where a lot of kids get messed up, right? Whether, the media is pumping their tires or they're trying to drag them down. I think that plays a big toll on a tournament like this. Believe in yourself. Trust your teammates. Go to war for the guy that you're sitting next to in the dressing room. Set aside all your selfishness, your ego, your narcissism. It's about 3 weeks of coming together and doing it for the guy next to you. I think that's the biggest thing for a tournament like this. These kids have to realize is, when you lace them up, do it for the guy next to you. All the individual accolades, individual success will come if the team's having success. So do it for each other.
Oh, Jordan, I think that's really, really well put. We really appreciate you giving us some time today. It was great to pick your brain a little bit on the World Junior experience, talk a little bit about hockey fights as well. So we really appreciate you giving us some time today.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Wow. Amazing conversation with Jordin Tootoo. I want to thank actually Hockey Canada for helping us put this together. Tournament's kicking off, boys. We just spent time talking about one of its stars from the past and can't thank Jordin Tootoo enough for his time. Team Canada is going to going right away. We're going to have some stuff to give away courtesy of Hockey Canada on the nation's social accounts. So stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to it. And again, we will be promoting Team Canada throughout the tournament, as well as we cheer them on, hopefully towards a gold medal. Just to kind of wind that down, boys, what did everybody think about how that went?
Oh, just a great guy in general. Like, you can tell he loves sharing his story and all of that. And he gave us some great answers on the World Juniors as well. Like, that was just really fun. And of course, we needed the confirmation on the caribou jerky story.
Yeah, of course. And it was nice to know that there was no animosity of when he was chasing Jeff Waywick around for scraps.
Well, and for me, like I mentioned in the interview there, like being in Halifax around that time, that was just his introduction to all of us, I think, as hockey fans. Unless you were following the WHL pretty closely, he was just an absolute fireball for that team that year, and they just happened to come up against Alexander Ovechkin playing in the World Juniors, and they lost in the finals. But yeah, he's just a down-to-earth good guy, and he's really honest. And I love when we have these interviews and the guys are just straight up and honest with us about, he didn't like fighting, and you get that, you understand that, but he knew his role and he played it well. So it's a lot of fun to do these interviews.
I'm really looking forward to talking to him again as well. After we wrapped up, we spent another couple of minutes just kind of thanking him for his time, and he did offer to come back, boys. So that means we didn't do a horrible job.
Yeah,
there you go.
It wasn't too uncomfortable.
Hey, when you get those hour-long sit-downs, those are always fun. They always tend to, you have a bit of a script for it, and then it kind of wanders off one way or some way, and then you get a real good story down those little avenues.
Yeah. Because he even talked about it, right? Like, I think I loved what he said when I asked him about having an internal fire, that it's hard work and you got to push yourself forward, and to be able to eventually be able to sit down with him again for a longer period of time and go through his entire career from the come up to the World Juniors to the NHL to where he's at now. I think that'd be a really, really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys said, it's nice to know that we didn't offend or anything, but like he had an answer for literally every question we asked. Yeah. It's just he's a really good dude. These guys are, and that's something I think it's a good reminder for everybody. I think everybody here kind of understands it, but maybe people watching at home or listening at home maybe tend to forget. And when I was younger, I did forget too, that these are kids at the World Juniors, and this is a ton of pressure for them. They're slapping on their country's logo, and I'm not just talking about Canadians either. And so, his advice was to log out of social media and not pay attention to the media. But, at the end of the day, these are kids, and this is one of the biggest moments in their careers, whether they know it or not at this point, as he mentioned.
And again, Jordin Tootoo, you can pick up his book, All the Way, My Life on Ice, JordinTootoo.com. You can go find out where to pick up that book there. I encourage you to do it. He is fascinating. A lot of great stories. Looking forward to the next time we get to speak to him, because I know he's going to pull out more stories that we may not have expected, and it's going to be a great conversation. So again, thank you to Hockey Canada for helping us put it together, and to Jordin Tootoo for just giving us the time and being willing to share his story with us. So that's great. If you have any feedback on the interview, hit us up on social, Owen Radio Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Slide into the DMs. Tell Tyler that we did a good job. Tyler had his buttons ready. His Wicked quotes. We had questions available. Nobody talked over each other. I think all in all, that was a great
producer's dream right there.
Mm-hmm. And you know what else is a producer's dream, Tyler, is when it's time to get your buttons ready, because it is the hot and cold performers of the week.
Yes. I don't have a button. I just press for that.
We should come up with some kind of, if you have an idea, you know what we could do? That little clip from Katy Perry's Hot or Cold.
Yeah, sure.
That's what we could put in there eventually. I don't know.
He's writing that down.
Yeah, he's writing it down. Tyler is a professional. I want to thank Tourism Jasper for making the hot and cold performers possible. Head on out to Jasper. Get outside. If the weather's nice, Marmot's open. You want to do some hiking? Available. You want to do some cross-country skiing? Let's do it. They are available for some outside options to get outside and enjoy the beautiful mountains in our Wonderful, wonderful province. As we do every week, we are starting with the cold performers of the week, meaning the things that were not so nice over the last 7 days of our life. As I'm looking at the Zoom screen, Dan is on my far right, so I'm going to start with him with the Tourism Jasper cold performer of the week.
Well, I'm treading lightly on this one. I'm not going to name any specifics, but it's just been a week of social media issues all over the Western Canadian fandoms. I would like to say, everybody on social media, just take a deep breath and think about what you're saying and think about who you're attacking, all that kind of stuff. Especially as we go into this, this holiday season, and people are going to have a little bit more time on their hands. So it's hockey Twitter for the last couple weeks. My cold performer of the week.
They are just fucking. Oh no! They
are just fucking. Oh nope.
Next up on my screen, I see my pal and trip roommate Rick. Your Tourism Jasper cold performer of the week.
Well, this has to go to whoever. This might be multiple people, but whoever's coming up with this whole "we can't play hockey in Canada" thing. Like, I know we don't really take it that seriously, so that's fine. But that's enough to get on my list here. So whoever's idea this is, whoever's getting in the fucking way, get the hell out of the way. You're definitely the cold performer this week.
I'm upset.
Mr. Yaremchuk, you're next up on my screen. Your Tourism Jasper cold performer of the week.
My cold performer of the week goes out to the news that Henrik Lundqvist isn't going to be able to play this year. I mean, just an absolute legend, a lock to be in the Hall of Fame. The heart condition is going to keep him out of the NHL this year. And I mean, if you read between the lines a little bit, I'm a little worried this might be the end for King Henrik before he gets to finish off his career on his own terms. So too bad. One of the best goalies of his generation, Henrik Lundqvist's career, potentially being cut short. That is my cold performer of the week.
Are you thrilled? I'm not.
Nor should you be thrilled, Tyler. My Tourism Jasper cold performer of the week ends up being me. Because I hadn't weighed myself in a while, Tyler. It's been a while, and I've been eating a lot of Doritos and pizza and carbs in general, and drinking more alcohol. No, I'm not saying there is, but Dan, I got to tell you, bag milk a little thicker than he once was, and I'm going to give my diet the cold performer of the week.
Wait. Before we get the button here, shouldn't we get the weight?
No.
I'm at a plus. I'm at a plus. Probably, I'm at a plus 15 since the last time I saw you, buddy.
Boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Oh, thick boy.
Yeah, thick boy bag milk coming at you. 3 C's.
Just keep it warm in the winter.
Yep, it is getting chilly.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's just more to me to love, people. Flipping the ledger to our hot performers of the week. This is the bright side of your life in the last 7 days. I'm reversing the order here. On the left side of my screen, I see Tyler. You're first up on your Tourism Jasper hot performer of the week.
Former Edmonton football team equipment manager Dwayne Mandrusiak. Fun fact, we curl on the same nights at the St. Albert Curling Club. But anyways, that's beside the point. After he was, I know, big flex, big flex. After he was, let go by the Edmonton football team during the pandemic, which was just an absolute joke. News came out that he's going to be heading into the World Junior bubble to help out with the equipment staffs, to help all the equipment staffs of all the teams. So it's nice to see Dwayne Mandrusiak get back in the news a little bit in a positive way. And I know he's going to kill that role. So Dwayne Mandrusiak gets my hot performer of the week.
Put some respect on my name.
Shout out to whoever from Hockey Canada figured that one out.
Oh, yeah.
Good move by them.
That was a great move by them. Next up, Rick, you are in the middle of my screen. Your Tourism Jasper hot performer of the week.
This one could have gone out a couple of weekends ago, but I think she got her first points last weekend. So we're going to go with Sarah Fuller, who is the first female in a Power 5 football conference, so one of the Big Five. And she hit two point afters in the SEC game last weekend. So that's a huge shout out to her.
Cash money.
100%. Mr. Nation Dan, you are up next. Your Tourism Jasper hot performer of the week.
Well, we're starting to get back into the season, so I'm going to go to a reporter, a local reporter, Mark Spector, a man who takes a lot of abuse online, I think, and I love when a guy can take a moment to laugh at themselves. So he announced on his Twitter that Theodore Lundqvist was going to be making his way back to training camp, and somebody asked him, "What's the over/under on you running him out of town?" To which Mark Spector responded, "Dunno, was his dad a bullfighter?" And he was kidding. But I love when a guy can take a little moment to laugh at himself. So my hot performer of the week is Mark Spector.
I like this right here.
Just to wrap this up, my Tourism Jasper hot performer of the week is going to go out to Jay Downton. He called me the other day and he said, "What do you think about this idea I have?" Which is the Oilers Nation hospitality support tee that we got up at nationgear.ca right now. It's a great idea. For $35, you can pick up a t-shirt and get a $20 gift card to a restaurant or pub of your choice. Everything that we do at the Nation is surrounded around getting the community together. We've been treated so well by the hospitality industry in this city that we want to do anything we could to try and give back. So I'm going to give my hot performer to Jay for the idea, and to all of the amazing people that supported us in the initiative, whether that's buying a t-shirt and supporting a local shop with that money, or just helping us spread this around social media. So for the Oilers Nation hospitality support tee, everybody involved with the process, hot performer of the week.
Yeah! Shout out to me for almost letting my laptop die and losing this interview. I had to sprint to go grab my charger. Oh, that would have been bad.
That would have been a cold performer for the ages.
Hey, Jordan, remember when you said we could have an hour of your time?
Hey guys, it's been 15 minutes. It's been 15 minutes, guys. Yeah,
turns out we needed to talk to you again. And could you you had some really good answers. So if you could try to remember exactly what you said in the interview that we accidentally lost, that'd be great.
This is our last show before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone listening. Happy holidays. Whatever you're doing, I mean, stay safe and all that good stuff. And to you three, thank you all very much. I love talking to you guys every week. And if you haven't noticed, I'm hastily trying to wrap this up so my laptop doesn't die.
From all of us here at Oilers Nation Radio, the last thing I'm going to say before we say goodbye is please leave your podcast reviews. They've slowed down since I've stopped asking. So here I am asking. We're going to take a week off next week for Christmas, but then we'll be back with a fresh episode of Oilers Nation Radio. In the meantime, please leave us a review. Tell your friends, tell your aunties and uncles, coworkers, cousins. Just yell it out your window. Oilers Nation Radio is available on all of the podcast platforms. And I also want to wish you all a Merry Christmas from all of us here on the podcast and from Tyler waiting to push the button. This is Oilers Nation Radio, episode 117. Thank you to Sherwood Ford, Skip the Dishes, Hockey Canada, and Tourism Jasper for making it all possible. Have a great weekend, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Happy Festivus, Damien.
Best wishes.
Thanks for listening to Oilers Nation Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media to stay up to date and never miss a podcast.